do that. Let me know if the sound is okay, everyone. Obviously, I have the music down low because, you know, if I decide to speak, I don't want to be competing against it, but And I've been wanting to, if anyone has read The Wheel of Time book series, I've been wanting to like illustrate Fade for a while. So I decided to do that. The only thing I've never quite been able to get a good, clear picture of is how I would approach their eyelessness. I was never a big fan of like the description of that smooth, like eggshell kind of thing, but we'll see. We'll figure it out. Am I doing Inktober? I might. I draw so much in ink that I don't know. And sorry, I'm seeing here that uno momento. Sorry, I want the chat to pop out or to show up in the stream here, and it's not. But where's the weird? I swear they like always move it. But in terms of Inktober, yeah, I mean, I think what ends up happening is I'm like, yeah, I'm totally gonna do it, but I do so much drawing in ink that it's kind of like not that big of a deal anymore. But you know, I end up doing some for sure. It was a great way for me to kind of get into drawing with ink more in the first place, which was awesome. Like, and I've kind of never really looked back from there. You know, I love drawing in ink, and I kind of just made it a point to keep doing that, because it helps with my pencils. It helps me be more deliberate with my pencils. So I think drawing in ink is just overall a really good practice for people to do in general. Turn this guy down a little more. Because sometimes if I'm drawing in pencil all the time, I'll just find myself getting just a little too finicky with stuff. Too many lines and just not making choices and sticking to them, doing a little too much of like, yeah, maybe this, and then my pencil stuff will get messy, and I don't like that. So these guys are supposed to be eyeless. I don't want him to have like he's, I don't know how to explain it. I don't want him to have like holes, like empty sockets, since Robert Jordan did describe them as just like their forehead just continues down. Yeah, that just sounds weird to me, so I kind of just always liked the idea of just them having this sort of loose skin here. Because the thing is, like, I would still want them to have some kind of, like, eyebrow structure just for expression. I think if you take that away, then you lose a lot of potential for expression with them. So we'll just keep it kind of, creepy and just like this, loose skin that goes down. I'm okay with that. Brett, are you doing Inktober? Nice. Are you doing the whole? I know a lot of people have gotten into doing this whole like Preptember thing, right? Where they'll kind of start prepping their images and doing like pencil roughs and stuff throughout September, and then just go to town inking in October. Which is kind of fun. I think that could be a fun way to do some stuff that's maybe more involved. Because I know for me, since I work full time, it's hard to do anything that's more involved unless I want to spend multiple days on one image. Which sometimes I do. It's kind of fun. Though I never did the Preptember thing. Nice. Yeah, I think it's a great practice, honestly, especially if you can do the daily deal. I know, obviously, some people just really can't manage that, but I do think it's a great practice. I don't worry about it so much because no matter what, I pretty much draw every day, so I don't really worry too much. Not sure what kind of a clasp. Maybe just a sort of demon ram head for his cloak. Oh, commissions. I always think it's a good idea. Because I'm like, yeah, totally. Like, that'll be fun. And then it always just turns into work. But it's because I work full time. And then I'm like, really? Why did I think I should take on work outside of work? So I kind of stopped doing commissions. Like, no, I have little enough time as it is to draw my own shit, so... I have some kind of armor reference up on the screen. Not that I really need it, it's pretty simple, and because these guys have cloaks, I'm not really showing it in great detail, but just in case. Yeah. So are you doing like a portrait kind of commission? Because yeah, that's always a pain if you can't shoot the reference yourself. You know, that's like, ugh. It's so annoying. Alright, this is what I need to figure out. And where the reference doesn't actually do me a whole lot of good. Although it could work. It could work. I'm debating because so much of the cool armor was sort of built around. Hey, there's our chat. It's weird. I don't know why it didn't work before. Caesar, I'm working on, I don't know if you read the Wheel of Time series or not, but I've been wanting to illustrate a fade for a while, so I figured, why not? Let's do that. So, you know, this guy's gonna end up having all, like, black armor, which is always cool. I'm just trying to figure out the armor a little bit. And I want this kind of languid sort of gesture. A lot of the armor that I was looking at is sort of based around horseback. And they do ride horses, so I guess that's okay. We can do that. Change. But I'm gonna end up doing like, you know, I want it to be kind of nighttime. We're gonna have mist and stuff going, so I'm not like worrying terribly about exactly what's happening with the legs. What I want is I want this mist and some stuff blowing, because the whole one of the concepts with them, which I always loved, was that the wind does not affect them, right? So it could be storming and their cloaks and stuff won't move, which gives them this kind of eerie, otherworldly nature. It's always a question of like how do you want to achieve a kind of spookiness with a character, right? Like, do you want them... For me, I've always kind of felt like it's not as creepy when they're just super like standing up straight, broad-chested, and that, unless they just look demonic as hell, and then yeah, it would be scary. But I always found it creepier if they sort of come off a little decrepit in a way, but they can actually like really move. Right, these guys are supposed to be like serpent quick, and so I don't know. I'm thinking a pose that feels a little decrepit might be more the vibe that I want. I have friends that do pet portraits. They do royal pet portraits. If you look up Lord Truffles, they do some pretty awesome pet portraits. And yes, hey, it, you know, pays the bills. I feel like on a certain level I wouldn't mind that because I love animals. You know, I generally like animals a little more than I like people, so... I certainly like my cat more than I like most people. Yeah, alright, I'm feeling that a little more. A little more. Cool. Normally I have a clearer idea of what I'm going for before I start, but this time I was like, well, I know the character I want to draw, but I don't have a super clear idea of how I'm going to draw him. So, and when I'm doing the roughs and stuff, I'm usually just kind of focusing on the silhouettes of the different forms more than anything, because I know that with especially with digital, man, you can just push and pull this stuff all day, right? actually don't want him to have a curved sword. Let's do a straight. Straight, thin blade. Right. Move him over. Scaling down a little bit. There we go. Yeah, thank you, by the way. I'm glad you're digging it. I definitely, I don't know. I didn't want that, like, big upright kind of a thing. So, alright. So, detail this guy a little bit more. I think one of the challenges can be to like come up with an interesting design without just relying on a ton of detail. You know, because if this guy's like black armor, black cloak, I mean, you could totally like just go nuts and have all this. I don't know, maybe he's got stuff etched into his armor, or, you know, something. Some kind of designs to make it a little more detailed, but I don't know, I don't necessarily feel the need to do that. We'll give him gloves, though. And I don't know if it's like... I don't know how much I'm going to render it, honestly. Some of that I kind of just play by ear. Sometimes I think like, yeah, I'm just going to go to town on it, and then I get it to a certain point, and I feel like, you know what, rendering it more is not really going to add much. So some of that, I think, to a degree, I will play by ear. And it's kind of more just as long as it takes me to, like, whatever it takes to get the desired effect, right? Like, because some of the materials, you might get sort of the feeling of those materials pretty quick, and you may not need to render them too much. And then other materials might take a little more. You know, I actually want this hand. Going this way. Is anyone in town for Lightbox Expo? Oh yeah, I saw that Westermo thing. I mean, I haven't watched it. I was actually watching Hollis Dunlap's painting video because he's one of my favorite contemporary painters. And it's about 18 hours of just limited palette awesomeness. So I would highly recommend that to anyone. But yeah, Westermo, man, old school dude. Been doing this stuff for a long time. So I might check it out since I kind of, since I do movie posters too. It'd be cool to just, I don't know, see if there's some tidbits in there that he might have. Alright. I gotta move this sword. Plus, that's fine. That's actually too thick. Did we? Okay. Woo. Yeah, I've been just like mostly prepping for Lightbox Expo, but as soon as that's done, I am actually going to get on a regular streaming schedule. And I will probably also start working on a Patreon account. Because it'd be great to be able to do this stuff a little, more regular. And maybe not have to worry about the full-time thing as much. By the way, a lot of times if I know I'm gonna paint this up and I have a pretty good idea of where that's gonna go, I don't really feel the need to go crazy with the drawing, right? I need the landmarks to be there, but sometimes I think what I found in the past was if I did too good of a drawing, it would be hard to paint it up because I'd be afraid of messing up the drawing. Though that was more with traditional stuff, not so much with digital. But even with digital, if I don't really plan on keeping the drawing in there, then I don't need it to be like super detailed. And especially because this is gonna get pretty dark. Right, I'm actually gonna have it be nighttime. So we're gonna get his like white skin kind of glowing in the moonlight and whatnot. I'm a fan of doing night scenes. It's fun working with the really limited values and limited color range. And I figure since this guy's just all nighttime colors anyway, might as well run with it. Again, mostly worrying about the silhouettes of shapes. So, let's do this. Whoops. Oh, it's so nice sometimes when you do that and you don't have to stare at white anymore. I should have probably done a mid-tone to begin with, but oh well. Yeah, Evan's streams are great. I've been watching those myself. I love watching people that are just like, you know, really good at what they do. I don't know, it's a lot of fun. Even if someone works just in a way that I wouldn't really work, it's just really fun to kind of see them be awesome, you know. And then let's get... I was initially going to get the moon behind him, but I don't really want to worry about that silhouette read. So instead I'll more hint at it being off camera somewhere. Get some mist going behind him. And I'll totally be pushing and pulling some of these values, I'm sure. Alright, then what that gives me is something to put his silhouette over. Dark. It doesn't really matter what color, I don't think. is huge. This is just because I tend to work with clipping masks a lot, so, you know, I just like to kind of hash out that silhouette. Especially when you want to add texture and stuff on top of stuff, the clipping mask is just so great for that. Be able to do broad strokes and, you know, not worry about your marks going all over the place. I remember when I first discovered clipping masks in Photoshop, and I was just like, oh my god, this is like what I've always wanted. So then when Procreate finally introduced them, that's actually what made me kind of really want to jump into it. I'd tried off and on and wasn't super sold on it because I felt like it would still take a little too long to do certain things. But once they introduced the clipping masks and when they revamped their brush engine, I was just like, alright, sold. Let's do this. Any actors I can draw from imagination? I mean, probably if I really thought about it. You know what'll happen is that when I'm working on a project at work, we'll end up drawing a particular actor or actors so much that at the time, yes, by the end, like once I get a few sketches in, I don't really need a whole lot of reference to get their likeness, which is great. Like, I'll still have reference up for details, but I will at least be able to block in a sketch without needing a ton of reference to do that. We'll probably turn that off pretty soon. But then once I'm done with that project and I've moved on to the next one, you know, it's kind of, it gets a bit of like out of sight, out of mind for me, because I just don't feel the need to, you know, keep all that information in my head. But I'm sure there are some I could probably manage out of my head. I'd have to think about who that would be. I'm not sure. I imagine at the end of this we'll end up vignetting it a little bit, because why not? Let's give this stuff some blur. Alright. Then we can do away with that layer. We don't need it. Now let's get our shadows in here. How about that? I want these shadows to be fairly blue. I figure if the moon is kind of coming from somewhere in the upper right, and we'll just say it's a full moon, because why not? Strong enough to cast some shadows. I'll probably end up darkening this stuff down. All of this is getting a little light for me, but I want to kind of get his values in there before I've fine-tuned the values of the environment. By the way, I've mostly been using Max Ulechny's gouache pack, his max pack, his gouache max pack brush set. Love this thing, especially if you're like me and you like to get a little bit of a traditional flair to it. It just has some really killer brushes. He does a great job with them. I think it's like $30, but it is so worth it. There are a ton of brushes in here, as you can see. So you get a lot of brushes, plus you get the gouache smudge pack, which has some great smudge brushes in it. So I would highly recommend it. Made me very happy. Now, one of the things with black, it's always kind of a challenge of how far do you go with that? Let's bring this guy up, since we don't need to worry about the environment right now. Sargent was such a master with both black and white. The way that he would simplify them was always so impressive. And so then I think sometimes, at least one of the things I would need to ask myself is, am I going for an illustration or a character design, right? Because that would kind of determine. I think I want to err on the side of the illustration. I'm not trying to show every detail of this guy's design. So if you're just going for an illustration, you can get away with stylizing the lighting and shrouding things and mist and shadow, which to me kind of just captures the vibe of these guys. And of course, when you're working on a night scene, you want to just remember that limited palette, so you don't need to sit there and go flesh tones and all that. It's really just a matter of pushing warms and cools. So let's see where this falls. So you can see where that base color is, and so I just want to get the vibe of, he's supposed to have pale skin, but I don't know that I want it to be completely bluish per se. So I'm gonna warm it up and lighten it up. And then I'll sneak some kind of even warmer tones in there at some point. But a little. I want him to have the feel of like almost being dead. You know, anyone that's read The Wheel of Time knows that these guys were clearly inspired by the ring wraiths in Lord of the Rings, which is fine. I don't want to go super detailed right now. Although realistically, I'm like, okay, he's got pale skin and black armor and a black cloak and black hair, so it's not like we're gonna have a whole lot of local colors to have to mess with. But I don't want to actually go black with anything. Even in painting, I tend to avoid using hard blacks, meaning traditional painting, but especially because I can so easily with on the right layer, yeah. With digital, I tend to avoid using hard blacks and hard whites. They just will have a tendency to flatten things out, so I don't like to use them unless there is a very, very good reason. I'm getting in kind of the accents, the accented darks, so this is what'll start to give a little more form and depth to things. Plus, this then gives us the darkest tone to key everything else off of. I could have gotten this stuff in sooner, but you know, I don't always like to get it in right away, because I don't always know how dark I want those darkest tones to be. So what I will do is let's kick the opacity down on these lines. It's good to do that at a certain point if you're actually going to paint something up, because otherwise you can't quite see where the lines are doing all the heavy lifting, and we want to be able to see that. And yeah, feel free, ask questions about anything. If anyone is going to Lightbox Expo, definitely come by my booth, number 106, and say hi. If anyone wants to know more about sketch art or is interested in, you know, doing sketches for movie posters and stuff, I'd love to talk to you. It's like, I don't know. I feel like nobody knows about it, and that bugs me. It bugs me because it's like everyone thinks that digital is where you have to go with your art, and in some cases, sure, you do, but I mean, this year is probably an exception for me, but most of the time, I would say 70% of my work is still pencil and paper. And there really aren't many avenues in the art world where you can still get paid pretty damn well to draw with a pencil. Like, I don't know, it's a pretty fantastic thing. I'm gonna darken some of these. Let's start with the background. They're now getting like a little too light for what I want. It doesn't read as night, so but what I'll do is I'll darken this and then bring back some of the glow in the upper right. Always fun to kind of play and see what you can get away with. Bring back that glow. What am I looking for? Just a big soft brush. The other thing I want, it's a little too saturated. Maybe it's just the color. I'm not a fan of that color. Yeah, there we go. You know, I don't, and sometimes I feel like I should flip the image more. And I know a lot of people have made a habit of doing that, which is probably a good thing. And I should. But I don't always. Want that texture. Texture. And I'm trying to think if, I do have it on my quick menu, so I probably should do that, huh? So, weird. And it's a good thing to do to check your work. You know, make sure you're not totally fucking anything up. Most of the time, though, that, like, I think I tend to use that more if I'm drawing someone that's a little more head-on. Smudgy smudge. Alright, that feels a little better. Because I will catch some highlights and stuff on his armor, so he's gonna kind of, you know, bling out a little bit. I want shadow overlay. I do multiply. Well, let's try it. I want to vignette this guy a little bit. Even though it's something I could totally wait to do till the end. Those corners are bugging me. So, yep. Nope, nope. I don't want it to go over him, though. Because that'll just mess us up. Okay. Think, right? Make sure it's not. There we go. Alright, back to it. Back to it. Let's do this. You know, I don't actually participate in a lot of conventions at all. I used to do San Diego Comic-Con every year, but then it just kind of like, you know, it's a tough one when you're not working on like a known product. You know, it gets really tricky if you're just there kind of randomly showing your art. Why that brush doesn't feel right. And I just found like more than anything it was becoming just a nice opportunity to get out of LA, and I love San Diego. So, you know, and it's always great to be able to hang out in the gas lamp. But more than anything, I loved seeing all the artists, and that's all I really cared about. So when Bobby Chiu announced Lightbox, and it's right here in Pasadena where I live, I was like, oh, hell yeah. It's like all I really wanted anyway. So I don't do a lot of conventions. I wouldn't mind, though, like, getting into more of them. But it does get a little hard to take, just like, you know, be taking time off of work too much. We get pretty swamped. So, yeah, it gets a little tricky. I'm going to have to address his sword. And I might as well do that now, because that is just wonky as shit. Wah! Giant eraser. So let's do this first. And then we'll do this guy. Nice, that would have been huge. Huge. Alright. Back to this. And I'm always hesitant, like, so with metal, you know, you can so quickly and easily cheat the specular highlights and stuff with like an overlay layer, and I always battle with like, should I do that, or is that too easy, or do I want the challenge of painting it? Because I love manually painting things too, just because that way, if I decide ever I want to paint something similar in traditional media, then I know that I can. Whoops, which one am I on? Let's do this guy. So sometimes I do like to avoid using the little, you know, layer adjustments and stuff. By the way, I'm just softening some of these edges, right? Because if you have a form that's rounded, you don't usually want to give it a really crisp edge, unless you're kind of stylizing things in that way. But it's a good idea to kind of... that was huge. It's a good idea to give your rounded forms a little softer edge, because that'll help them turn away, you know, from the viewer. Since I'm using clipping masks, it's a good idea to nitpick the silhouette a little bit. Even though at the end I will have a layer that's not clipped, where I'll be able to cut in and out of the form as needed. But for now, I want to make sure I have something interesting to work with.